Thanks for joining me, Matt. It's awesome to get to meet you. You
Yeah,
might
you too.
know Matt. Matt Leslie is the co-writer of Winnie-the-Pooh, Blood and Honey 2. He also did the movie Summer of '84, which I just watched last night in preparation for talking to you. Because I had never seen it before. I had Shudder, and then I dropped off Shudder, and then I was like, I should definitely seek it out, and it's awesome. So I'm sure you've
Nice.
gotten,
I'm glad you dug it.
yeah, I'm sure you've gotten that for tons of times over the last, how it's 2018 was the release, so it's been a few years. So hopefully you're not annoyed by me saying how much I dug your film.
Never, that could never happen. No, I mean it's funny because you know how film is. It's all subjective, and everyone's got a different opinion. There are plenty of people who don't like the film, and but it's been really cool to see it's kind of built up like a cult status where there's a good population of people who really do dig it, and that's been really rewarding and fulfilling.
Yeah, no, definitely. So just take a step back to when you were writing that with your co-writer, which I have Stephen J. Smith, who you're
Yeah,
doing another film with him, which I'll talk about in a little bit. Um,
cool.
but so when you were writing that with him, did you have like any influences in mind beyond like the obvious like Rear Window type inspirations and maybe It, or what were your inspirations?
Yeah, so there were a lot. So Steve and I kind of both grew up in suburban America. Like I grew up in the suburbs of Massachusetts. He grew up in the suburbs of Wisconsin, and had a very kind of similar childhood where we, for whatever reason, we both kind of had a weird neighbor on our block that we always kind of were like, what is that person doing in there? And anyway, so we were just kind of, I think because of that, we also loved we have a lot of, there's a lot of different genres we love, but in particular the sort of paranoid neighborhood conspiracy subgenre, like
Yeah.
where it's like you mentioned Rear Window, and then there's like The Burbs and Fright Night and movies like that, and then just sort of other movies that are kind of like in the periphery of that, like The Goonies or The Lost Boys. Just sort of the idea that there's something going on in the community that you live in was always something that was really fascinating to us. And I remember the day I pitched him the idea of kind of like the crux of what this was. And he was like, dude, that would be so much fun to write. And, so that's kind of how it started.
It when I was watching it, it kind of felt like, and I mean, I don't know if it was, but it felt kind of like someone that just, it was kind of like a passion project for you guys. Like it felt very much like someone that grew up with the '80s, and like, because like I remember like with my dad, I would watch like the Goonies, and I didn't get to watch like it until later, but the Goonies when I was younger, and I mean, it definitely has that dynamic with all those young actors. And I didn't write down the actor that played the neighbor from Mad Men,
Oh, yeah. Rich
but
Summer.
Rich Summer, he was fantastic. As yeah, I don't want to. I highly recommend people go check it out on Shudder, because it's well, first time seeing it yesterday. I loved it, so highly recommend. No spoilers here. Go watch it. Uh,
Oh, that's awesome. I'm glad you felt that way. Yeah, we were really lucky in that our production company, financier Gunpowder and Sky, were very supportive of us just finding an awesome actor for that role. They weren't trying to like, a lot of times when you're making a movie and you're casting, there's this expectation that you're going to go out and try to get like the biggest possible superstars you can. And in indie film, that's just unrealistic most of the time. Like you're not going to get Kevin Bacon or Josh Brolin or somebody huge to play these kind of roles on like a $1.5 million movie. And I
yeah,
think Gunpowder and Sky were just like, look, we don't really care about getting the biggest name possible. We just want you to get somebody who's an amazing actor. And we all loved Rich Summer from seeing him in previous things that he's been in. And we were super lucky because when he read the script, he was like, I've always wanted to do something like this. And he really brought something creepy to it. Like we had so many fun conversations with him about like how he saw the character and what he wanted to bring to it. And he just went for it. It was really fun to watch on set.
yeah. No, I can just see. Yeah, just his. He's very you go back and forth on definitely if the lead character is really just a paranoid kid or not. And I don't know if you watched there was a show called Erie, Indiana.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
back in the day, yeah.
yeah, and Marshall, the main character on that it reminded me of the lead in this, except Marshall was never actually paranoid. He actually had a bunch of weird stuff happening in his neighborhood, so it kind of reminded me of him, kind of like
Yeah.
investigating, and but yeah, I just wanted
Well,
to, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
well, real quick, sorry. So that's also an inspiration. I loved in Erie, Indiana when I was a kid. It very much reminded me of like the town that I grew up in, and just sort of like what I wished was going on. Like because
Yeah,
it's like an adventure, right? And it's an adventure, and that kid who also starred in Hocus Pocus back in the day, which I love,
yeah, Omri
was such a
Katz.
great.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's such a great actor in some of those early '90s films and TV projects. But I loved that show. So
yeah.
good call.
Yeah, no, that's another one I grew up with my dad showing me it, and I grew up with Twilight Zone, and then I didn't watch all of Twilight Zone, but my dad's like, you'll probably dig Erie, Indiana. So
Yeah,
so and yeah, no, I got the vibes of that for sure.
nice.
So going into it's like what made you pick up into the Winnie the Pooh universe that they're building? What made you climb on board to that?
Well, it was really, really random, and it's certainly not something that was ever on my radar or something I would have ever thought I would do. It's a really ridiculous concept. It's a ridiculous premise. Winnie the Pooh kind of coming, him and his friends killing people to seek revenge. It's yeah, it's one of those deals where like, so the way I came into it is the composer of the first film. His name is Andrew Scott Bell,
Okay.
really, really talented composer. And I think that was really honestly the lone bright spot from the first film was the score. It's really, really good. And so he reached out and he was like, look, they were looking for a writer for the second film. Would you be interested? And right off the bat, I was like, no, probably not. But like, let me talk to these guys and just because you never know, maybe they're working on something else that might be cool to work on or
Yeah.
whatever.
Or
And so I got on a call.
maybe they're working on a whole Pooniverse. So,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
So, but anyway, I reached out to the director named Reese Brake Waterfield, and I just
Mhm.
had a chat with him, and I was like, I went into the call really skeptical. I kind of went in being like, I want to hear like, what his take is on the first one, and he basically just admitted like, look, we didn't know that the film was going to be a hit. They had made like 100 films in 2 years. Every one of them was like $50,000 budget or less or $30,000 budget. Like they were just like kind of a chop shop, like just crushing out these films,
Yeah.
trying to learn production and get better and better. And then this one, just the Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey film, just like for whatever reason struck a nerve and it blew up. And so they were very sober about the fact that it wasn't a good film. They, really ultimately wanted to make a much better film. And I really liked the ambition that they were going. Like they're kind of like these guys who because they're so low budget and they're so hands on themselves and they just figure everything out themselves, they can really stretch a budget. And so when they were talking about ideas, like when I say they, it's Reese and his partner Scott Chambers, who starred as
Christopher
Christopher
Robin.
Robin.
Mhm.
Yeah, so they just kind of like put it all out there, and they have an infectious energy. They love making films. They love slashers, and at the end of the day, I looked at it. I was like, man, I've always wanted to write a slasher, and I know this film is going to get made, right? Like a lot of times when you're a writer, you write stuff on spec or like on, what that just means, like speculatively, like who knows if it'll ever get made. But
Yeah.
I knew this film was going to get made, and I was like, that's kind of awesome. And I just love the idea of like making movies versus just writing them.
Yeah.
And I just was like, fuck it, let's just do this. So and we ended up having a blast doing it. I think they did a pretty good job, especially given the budget. Like the budget on this one was, I think, $415,000
Yeah.
US, which is like nothing. And when I
Yeah.
tell you the script that I delivered, I think I've said this on a couple other interviews. It's like, it's at least a $5 million script. Like, I
Yeah.
have no idea how they got even close to what they did. So I'm still blown away. And I think it turned out fun. I think it's a lot of fun. If you can get past the premise
Yeah.
of Winnie the Pooh and just enjoy it for the ride that it is, I think you'll really dig it.
Did so you had a pretty like you and the director you had a like a partnership when writing like like as you were writing you both shared ideas and wrote it together.
Yeah, so it's we developed the story together. So we basically created an outline. He was definitely the driving force of what he kind of saw this as. He had a lot of basically the first movie came out and on a I think a $20,000 budget, they made
Mhm.
$5 million.
Yeah.
And again, they knew it wasn't a great movie, but they wanted to make the second one like something that fans would really love. So Reese, the director, did all these all kinds of post-mortem interviews and questions, like just putting like stuff on different websites, like genre websites, asking people what they'd like to see in the sequel, like just really trying to bring together all kinds of information and data for him to like explore when we were doing this. So when we started working on it, he had all this stuff. He was like, I really want to do this and I really want to do that. And I think a big part of my job was sort of taking all these like random disparate ideas and just helping to give it shape, and then make sure that it had a story. So like I would never really want to make just a slasher where people just get murdered all this. Like I always want there to be story, and so that was a big part of my focus, is to have some kind of cool plot twists and reveals as much as you could without like boring. Because I think slasher fans also just like want more and more murder,
Yeah.
and it's like there's a tendency to be like they're almost annoyed by too much story.
Yeah.
So it's a fine line to walk, but that was kind of the focus. Yeah.
And there, am I right to say that there was definitely some direct influences on some of the characters, like relations to like Tigger was very similar to like Freddy, like a reincarnation of Freddy
Yeah.
Krueger, because I mean that I love those little things. Like to when I wrote my review for the film, I was like, this is what the first film, what I wanted the first film to be. When you take such a insane premise, this is what it should be. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
I was hyping the film up, and I mean there's so much that like cool in the film, and I wanted
Oh, that's cool.
one of the cool things I really dug was the how it was kind of like you have these characters you grew up with. You had a wallpaper and all kinds of stuff, like Winnie the Pooh, and then it's just like you see them and they take on the characteristics of Freddy or Michael Myers
Yeah.
or the or and it's somewhat I've heard some people say that the owl kind of had like pinhead characteristics.
Yeah.
I took him kind of more the creeper from Creepers
Yeah.
Creepers
Yeah.
kind of.
So you're definitely nailing it. So Reese had very specific, like he kind of wanted them to sort of be like echoes of those kind of characters that are very familiar and that fans love. So you're right. Tigger has very Freddy Krueger vibes. Pooh has very Michael Myers, Jason Voorhees vibes, right? Like the silent brutalist killer.
Yeah.
You're right about Owl. Reese was like, I love that he'll kind of monologue before he kills you, just like Pinhead, but then he kind of looks like Jeepers Creepers. And then he even said Piglet, even though Piglet wasn't really in the film too much. It looks like he's going to be coming back for the next one. That he's very much like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, like Leatherface, kind of like that's kind of the vibe he wants to go for. Just like insane, reckless, like just like whirling around, killing people like crazy. So that's kind of
Yeah.
be going to be what Piglet will be in the next one.
Do you have any interest in coming back and continuing on with this universe if like at this moment?
I don't know. It's funny. It's like I don't really. This isn't necessarily the kind of film that universe that I think is something that I really want to keep uh playing in necessarily. It depends. Like I'm going to talk to Reese. Like I'm a big fan of Reese and Scott. But I think that if you're going to do like a Pooniverse film or Pooh 3, you got to have more money.
Yeah.
And whether that's going to be the case, like if it was the same budget, I don't even think it's necessarily doable to. I think it's going to be a really tough one to win. Where like even if I wrote it, doesn't mean they could actually shoot it or like capture it on the day
Yeah.
if the production budget's not high enough. So I don't know. I'm really torn about it. I think I'm just going to have to. Reese and Scott and I are just going to have some chats and see where this can go, because it's not that I'm against it necessarily. It's just that like the situation has to definitely be right for
Yeah.
all of us for it to make sense, because it's like it has to be bigger, better, all that stuff.
Yeah, no, I get that. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure what the box office returns were for this latest one, but I would imagine they were pretty good because I had a full theater. Um, But yeah, I mean, I kind of would pay it in kind of respect to like the Terrifier films, where the first Terrifier was made on like a couple grand, and then the second one was like almost like six times that, and then the next one was the new one is a couple million, so it keeps getting bigger and
Yeah,
bigger. I don't know if that's the reality of it, but that'd be cool if that was. So
that's kind of what would have to happen for them to make Pooniverse or Pooh 3, because it's like if they don't up the budget, it's not like, I know Terrifier 2 made a ton at the box office, and so
yeah.
they could really justify a much bigger budget for the third one. I'm not really sure what's like, I know it did okay in the US. Pooh Part 2 did. um I don't know what it's done internationally. It only played in the US for 3 days, whereas the
Yeah.
first one played for a much longer period. I think it was like 9 days or something. So I don't know what the box office returns have been like internationally yet. But hopefully it's making enough money that it can warrant a third one, and then the broader universe.
So just step back into like your writing. So you have your new film. It's like Don't Open the Door. I saw that's in post. Is I saw that you're back writing with your co-writer on Summer's 84, which is
Yeah,
awesome. It's cool to see like you guys returning. I don't know if you guys have been writing together for quite some time prior to Summer of 84, but
yeah.
it's like you're stepping into the director's chair. Was that like how was that experience going from writing to being behind the camera this go around?
Yeah, it was great. I mean, honestly, like it was, when we were on the set of Summer of '84, the directors of that, RKSS, which stands for Roadkill Superstar, it's a trio of directors from Montreal. They were great, but me and Steve, when you write something, you see something very clearly in your head. At least I do, and I'm very specific about it, and Steve is too. And so we were like, we really should direct, because, like, when you hand a script off to some other director or directors, it's going to happen that they're going to have different ideas or different visions for certain moments or whatever, and that's fine. But like, I think for certain people like me and Steve, we kind of realized like, okay, this is something we should really pursue as directing. So we wrote this script. It was called The Knocking at the time, and we got it greenlit, and we ended up shooting it and finished it, and now it's just, I think it's going to go to market at later this year, so hopefully it comes out early next year. We've since changed the title to Don't Open the Door, like you said, but directing it was so much fun. I mean, it's so hard, right? Like, we were actually we shot during COVID, so it was like masked up, and it was the whole
Okay.
thing, and so it was really challenging, but we loved it, and it's definitely something we want to keep doing, so hopefully there's more of that in the near future.
Well, I know you probably can't go into details about the film, but I know it's return to the horror genre again. It's like what
Yeah.
type of like horror is it? Is like going into like the slasher, or is it psychological? What kind of horror should we expect?
Sure, yeah, it's supernatural horror. Like, I'm very much a fan of grounded horror, which is actually part of why the whole Pooh thing was like such a different thing for me. It was like really just like going crazy, which was a lot of fun. But I'm very much like in the Hereditary, Smile kind of, that's the tone, that's the kind of tone that I really like, where it
Okay.
just feels like it could really happen to somebody. In this film, Don't Open the Door, it follows a guy named Cy, and he meets this girl, and he quickly falls for her, and then over the course of a few weeks they go on a lot of dates, but he realizes that she never invites him over to her place, and he starts to suspect that something weird might be going on, like maybe she lives with a guy and she's keeping it a secret or whatever, and that secrecy sort of drives him to discover what's going on, and it ends up being, I guess you call it a curse, and so it goes from there. It's
Okay.
it's a lot of fun. I think we have a great cast. Shiloh Fernandez from Evil Dead and a million other
Nice.
movies. It's amazing. Alexis Knapp from the Pitch Perfect series and other movies, and then Doug Jones, the OG Doug
Yep.
Jones from Guillermo del Toro fame, is in it, and he's great. And we just had a lot of fun, and
My
yeah, I
question
can't
is,
wait.
do you have Doug Jones? Is he like in makeup, or is he playing an like a character without the makeup? Because you're so used to him, being Abe and being the sapien from
Yeah,
the Shape of Water. Like, is he
yeah.
acting out of makeup this time around, or is he going into like a character again? or
Yeah,
you
so
don't
we
want to
we
tell me?
see
So
no. We see Doug's beautiful face,
okay,
and he's himself. But there's more to it, but I definitely don't want to spoil it. But I
no,
would say
totally
that yeah,
understand.
you get to see plenty of Doug, and by the way, he was like the most joyful person to work with. It was like he called me Maddie. He would give me, it was COVID, and he was still giving me hugs and stuff. Like he was just the sweetest, like absolutely the sweetest guy ever. I mean, I
That's
can't
awesome.
even believe what a sweetheart he is. He's better than you could even imagine. So it was such a joy working with him.
Well, that I've met him a couple times at conventions, and he just
So
seems
you
like
know,
he truly enjoys his fans and the work, and
yeah,
he loves talking about it with anybody that wants to talk about it. So he seems just like the most lovely person. Yeah. So,
so lovely. Yeah, super authentic, just like the best guy. So
but beyond the film we just spoke about, it's like, is there anything else we should be looking out for in the future? You got other things on the docket, or do you want to keep it under
yeah,
wraps?
no. I mean, like, there's nothing firm happening right now. Like, I'm not about to shoot a movie, but I have a couple of screenplays that me and my writing partner Steve are working on. One of them we will be directing. It's another supernatural horror film, kind of in the
Nice,
vein of Talk to Me, that we're really excited about.
nice.
We're really close to hopefully news on that getting made, so we'll see. Fingers crossed. But yeah, that's it. Just continuing to hustle, try to get movies made.
No, that's the way to do it, man. So I
That's it.
really appreciate you coming on and chatting for, I don't know how long we've been chatting, 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah,
So
thanks, Connor.
I really do appreciate you talking about the craziness that's Winnie the Pooh, and let me kind of like new fanboy over your film from 2018. So I do appreciate that. So
Oh,
uh,
cool. Thanks, Connor. Appreciate it, man.